What's going on, guys? Welcome to the video. Boris Johnson has threatened to pull his Brexit deal tonight if MPs vote down the timetable for it, or should any of these Remain MPs table wrecking amendments that will be tacked onto his deal that change it in any significant way. Of course, all that relies on the timetable for this withdrawal agreement bill actually passing tonight, which is never certain with the UK Parliament. These latest actions by Remoaners would force Boris to pull his Brexit deal and bring about a general election before Christmas. He would not be able to bring it forward again for the same reasons his meaningful vote was denied yesterday, without an election or another prorogation and Queen's speech. This is possible because reports currently claim that even Labour will back a general election if there is an extension to Article 50, which now looks almost certain. Of course, we do have to remember, Labour have said for years they wanted a general election, but when offered the chance twice last month, the Corbynated chicken avoided it like it was bird flu. If there is a general election though, that could possibly mean a no-deal Brexit soon, and at the very least would make it much more likely. Because as it stands, the Remoaners in Parliament are trying their best to close the loophole in Boris Johnson's deal that would make the legal default, leave him with no deal if a free trade agreement is not reached by December 2020. These actions against Boris Johnson's deal and the clause that allows us to leave with no deal are being led by former Tory MPs, including Rory the Soy Boy Stewart, Dominic Grieve, along with of course their Labour collaborators, who as usual want to give Parliament more control over the Brexit negotiations because as the Boris deal currently stands, they have no say on the free trade negotiations once the new deal is passed into law. Like I said, December 2020 with no FTA means a no deal exit on that day. And of course Rory Stewart knows by then we won't have this corrupt and broken Remoaner Parliament holding Boris back from a WTO exit. So he is terrified right now. A few outlets from both sides of the Brexit argument are reporting on this story after it emerged former Tory rebels and soft Brexiteers had been in lengthy discussions throughout last night with the Prime Minister aimed at removing the default from the new Boris deal. But the same reports also state the government has said no to these ridiculous demands, and rightly so. But that's not the end of it. There is another former Tory MP, Nick Bowles, who has tabled an amendment that aims to block what Rory was trying to compromise with the government last night. We could well see that pop up tomorrow, along with customs union, second referendums, and who knows what other amendments. But I expect we are likely to see them tomorrow before the end, as the bill is supposed to be finalised by Thursday. Of course, once again, providing it gets through today. So it seems the Remoaners are not giving up just yet, and we may well see this bill pulled by Boris and an election called very soon. So first we're going to hear from Boris Johnson as he tells the MPs if they vote down his timetable tonight, he will pull the bill entirely and go for a general election because he will not stand for months and months of delays, possibly longer.
A genuine point of order concerning the programme motion. The BBC Breaking News app is reporting that the Prime Minister has said if he loses the programme motion, he will withdraw the bill. Now, given that the Prime Minister is talking about working with the House, has he given you any notice, sir, if the programme motion falls, that he intends to pull the bill tonight?
The Prime Minister has not given me any indication on that matter, and we must leave him to develop his case. The Prime Minister...
Let me be very clear that, and I come to exactly the point the Honourable Gentleman raises, I will in no way allow months... No, I won't. Allow months more of this. If Parliament refuses to allow Brexit to happen and instead gets its way and decides to delay everything until January or possibly longer, in those circumstances can the government continue with this. And with great regret, I must go directly to the point that the Honourable Gentleman raises. With great regret, I must say that the bill will have to be pulled, and we will have to go forward, much as the Right Honourable Gentleman may not like it, we will have to go forward to a general election. And I will argue at that election. No, Mr. Speaker. I will argue at that election, let's get Brexit done, and the Leader of the Opposition will make his case to spend 2020 having two referendums, one on Brexit and one on Scotland. And the people, Mr. Speaker, will decide.
So there we have it, guys. Boris himself is telling these MPs if they vote down this timetable, get ready for an election because he will pull it instantly. Now, it is possible that the government's decision here has something to do with the Tory rebels' attempts last night to allow Parliament to have its say on future Brexit negotiations, which Rory Stewart went on BBC Radio 4 this morning to promote to the masses. This likely reaffirmed to number 10 they have to be ready for anything and might need to start taking a harder line with these traitors. So let's hear what Rory Stewart had to say on BBC Radio 4's Today programme about his undemocratic attempts to allow for endless delays before I finish this video.
In a day of crucial votes on Boris Johnson's deal, there's a lot of focus on what one particular group of MPs are going to do, and those are the ones who've been expelled from the Conservative Party because they backed the idea of having an extension. The former Conservative Cabinet Minister Rory Stewart was one of those and now sits as an independent. Earlier this month he announced he'd be running for London Mayor, and he's in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
And so just to be clear, will you be backing the principle of Boris Johnson's deal, which will be coming in the form of a second reading in front of the House today?
Yes, and that's for a simple reason, which is that although I voted Remain and passionately campaigned for Remain, I, like every other MP, promised to respect the result of the referendum. People voted for Brexit, and I believe we have an important obligation to honour that promise.
Sorry guys, I had to stop that there. Yes, Rory, every MP was elected on a promise to deliver the results of the referendum, not work around the clock to delay it in the hope of getting a new treaty with the EU that essentially keeps us in, since you was overjoyed with the Maybot deal. People voted to leave the EU, not have it delayed by Remain voters like yourself who want the power to extend Article 50 for years to come. So don't try and act like you give a shit what people voted for. It don't fly with me.
Nonetheless, you do have disagreements with the government, and what will you be doing over the timetable which has been set out for this bill, the 3 days to get it through the House of Commons?
I think it's important that Parliament has a normal time to discuss this bill, and the reason for that is that this is about legitimacy. It's about the way that particularly Remain voters are going to regard this. There's already so much suspicion and mistrust, which extends to the government and Parliament and others. We need to finish this in the proper way. And if we're going to deliver Brexit, we need to deliver it in a way that Brexiteers and Remainers believe was taken through Parliament fairly. That doesn't mean extending to the end of the year, but it does mean that we need a few days to do it properly. And if we don't do it properly, we're going to undermine the thing from the beginning. But
vast quantities of this, the withdrawal agreement bill, have already been debated exhaustively, some would say, in the House of Commons. And so there isn't, the argument goes, the same need to have that level of scrutiny.
Yes, I agree with that. However, we must do things properly. We must show that things can be scrutinised, that amendments can be brought forward in the normal way, that the public has the ability to watch this debate. This is a very complex piece of legislation. The withdrawal agreement itself is 541 pages long in the version that I've got. It's a political declaration about 30 pages. There's a bill which stretches up to about 100 pages. Even digesting this, and it's important. It's important for a country making a step as big as this, that it does it carefully and thoughtfully in public, in Parliament.
Wow. That whole monologue there from our soy boy friend was the usual bullshit we hear from MPs. They could pass bills quick enough to block a no-deal Brexit and force the government to get a deal, but they can't act as quickly to sort out that deal when the government gets one. Seems like they only work when it benefits them directly, or someone other than the British taxpayer is paying them to do something.
So what other efforts will you be making to make the deal more suited to your perspective? There has been talk of having a softer Brexit through a customs union, but we hear that perhaps your group of MPs is no longer so keen on that idea.
I think there's a bigger prize, which is making sure that the future Parliament, or any Parliament that's sitting, has proper control over the mandate for the negotiations.
This is the negotiations for the future trading relations.
Absolutely, the future trading relations. So that the Parliament should be involved in the mandate, in the progress of those, in the outcome, and in determining the extension. That's the bigger prize. If we can make sure that Parliament has a central role in the future negotiations, then that's our democratic opportunity.
Well, there is the real motive that drives this snake. His so-called real prize is for this Parliament, or any future Parliament, to have control over the mandate of negotiations, progress, outcome and any extension, which sounds to me like this shitweasel thinks this treacherous Parliament should have the right to involve itself in trade negotiations that are the sole job of the elected government. An utter disgrace. No wonder you was kicked out of the Tory party and got utterly trounced in the leadership contest.
And do you think that's something the government might be prepared to offer you?
Very much hoping so. It's something that we've been negotiating for yesterday and through the night to try to give Parliament that ability.
And then on the question of what happens at the end of the transition period, what kind of role should Parliament have then?
I believe Parliament should have the ability to determine an extension. I think it should be up to Parliament to do that.
But in that way, that'll be, some people will say that means that Brexit will never really happen, because if the transition period keeps going, we keep under EU laws, we keep in the single market, we keep in the customs union, we keep under the European Court of Justice. So Brexit will never get done, as the slogan goes.
I'm not actually sure I need to add anything to that part there. The BBC host thoroughly destroyed his ridiculous idea that Parliament should control the extensions. If that was the way it was, you might as well cancel Brexit now. These Remoaners would never allow Brexit to happen, so would be no point talking about it, which is exactly why the government will never allow this, and nor should they. The stuff this guy comes out with really is above and beyond. I haven't heard his voice for so long or paid attention to much he's said, but wow, he just talks some crap, don't he? Now obviously, that is not going to happen, no matter how much Rory the Soy Boy Stewart pleads with Boris Johnson. Boris is ready to go full nuclear, it seems, as you will see earlier in that clip I showed you. Boris is ready to pull the deal at a moment's notice and force an election. It might not be the worst idea now, to be honest. Drain the swamp and see where we are when the dust settles. Because like I've said in previous videos, with a Tory majority and the Brexit party in Parliament, he can scrap that deal, go back to the EU and say we want a straight free trade deal, as if it was a free trade deal between us and the US. None of the nonsense the EU want, none of that collaboration or cooperation of armed forces or any of that. A free trade deal focused on trade. Only with a majority could Boris Johnson do that, or any government for that fact. Of course, even if he does not pull this deal today, then there is still 2 more days with amendments flying around that could make Boris Johnson pull the deal. So I think we currently sit at about an 80% chance this deal is either rejected or pulled in the next 48 to 72 hours. So get ready to drain this swamp. Well, I'm going to end the video there, guys. I want to thank the channel's PayPal, Patreon and Subscribe Star members for supporting the channel, along with everyone who watches my videos. Remember to let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Leave a like, subscribe with a notification bell and share this video as it helps the channel a lot. And I will see you all in the next one.
Parliament is a dead Parliament. It should no longer sit. It has no moral right to sit on these green benches. They don't like the truth. Twice they have been asked to let the electorate decide upon whether they should continue to sit in their seats, while they block 17.4 million people's votes. Parliament is a disgrace, but they're too cowardly to give it a go. But the time is coming. The time is coming, Mr. Speaker, when even these turkeys won't be able to prevent Christmas.
Owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires. And that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going, and we are glad to be going. We're off.